Moin zusammen, herzlich willkommen zum Smart City Smart SH-Tag 2024. Wir haben vor 2 Jahren, 2022, haben wir einen ähnlichen Tag gemacht in der Seeburg. Der war auch recht erfolgreich und sehr gut besucht. Dieser hier ist auch sehr gut besucht, es sind nur noch nicht alle da. Die kommen aber noch. Und genau, in seiner Zeit hatten wir ganz viele Angebote über den Tag verteilt, weil es uns wichtig war, einmal zu zeigen, was alles geht und nicht darüber zu reden, was man müsste mal und wir wollen auf jeden Fall und das ist ganz wichtig, sondern wir wollten zeigen, was geht. Das machen wir heute auch. Und wer ist wir? Die Landeshauptstadt Kiel kennen, glaube ich, alle. Die ist Mitveranstalterin des Tages, dann ist Planeo Mitveranstalter des Tages. Planeo macht Smart City und Glasfaserstrategien. Die Fachgruppe Smart City aus der DIWISH, dem Verein für digitale Wirtschaft in Schleswig-Holstein, vertreten hier durch Björn, ist auch Mitveranstalter und Eisenschmidt Consulting, vertreten durch mich, ist auch Mitveranstalter. Wir machen auch eine ganze Menge, insbesondere im Bereich KI und Open Source für die öffentliche Verwaltung. Wir haben uns zusammengetan, wir haben diesen Tag vorbereitet, wir haben euch alle eingeladen, wir haben alle möglichen Leute eingeladen, heute was zu zeigen. Darauf freuen wir uns. Ganz kurz nur eine Information noch vorweg. Logistische Namensschilder gibt es draußen am Empfang. Wer noch keins hat oder keins vorbereitet hat, man kann sich auch selbst eins malen. Und dort liegen nachher auch Teilnahmebestätigungen aus. Also wenn jemand für seine Arbeitgeberin oder seinen Arbeitgeber eine Bestätigung braucht, kriegt ihr die da vorne. Und jetzt freuen wir uns auf einen tollen Tag mit euch und ich übergebe mal an Björn.
Vielen Dank. Herzlich willkommen von der Fachgruppe Smart City. Wir haben uns überlegt, wir machen daraus 3 Themenblöcke. In diesem ersten Themenblock werden wir uns über Daten unterhalten. Die Landeshauptstadt Kiel federführend. Wir werden es auf Englisch machen. Wir haben trotzdem beschlossen, auf Deutsch zu begrüßen. Nachmittags zeigen wir verschiedenste Lösungen, die es heute schon gibt, im Rahmen von smarten Kommunen, von Verwaltungen und von Cities und unseren Regionen. Abschließend tun wir den Tag um 17:15 Uhr mit einer Podiumsdiskussion rund über das Thema Mobilität, Klimaschutz und nachhaltige Stadt. Wie wollen wir zukünftig leben? Jetzt, dieser erste Block, läuft bis 12 Uhr. Dann machen wir eine Pause, laden bzw. haben Essen organisiert. Gibt es das eigentlich for free? Nein. Also, wir haben einen Foodtruck draußen vorm Haus. Da gibt es sozusagen etwas zu essen, Getränke draußen. Und um 12:45 Uhr stellen wir den Nachmittag vor. Er hängt auch heute schon draußen im Foyer aus, aber wir werden einfach die Chance haben, das nochmal einzeln anzusprechen und vielleicht noch weitere Gäste, die jetzt nicht schon eintrudeln, noch zu begrüßen. Ich übergebe mich an dich, Chris.
Ja, moin, mein Name ist Christoph Bechtel von der Planeo GmbH. Wir sitzen hier in Kiel, der Stadt aus der 1. Bundesliga. Ich bin hier auch der Hausmeister parallel, ich soll ein paar organisatorische Hinweise geben. Die Programme kleben draußen am Eingang und an der Tür zu diesem Saal. In jedem Raum kleben nochmals wieder die Programme für den Raum. Die Räume zum Finden sind die sogenannten Aquarien, also ist dieser Raum hier, und die Aquarien, da drüben haben wir keinen, oder? Doch. Und ein kleiner da drüben, genau. Die Aquarien erreicht ihr am besten, wenn ihr da hinten über die Treppe oder den Fahrstuhl geht. Ja, und dann geht es bis in die vierte Etage hoch. In den Aquarien gibt es auch kein Fischfutter. Namensschilder habt ihr alle. Anbieter haben, oder viele Anbieter haben grüne Namen. Das sind die, die sozusagen den Messeteil mit bestreiten. Die Organisatoren haben ein Logo. Wenn ihr Fragen habt, bitte an die Organisatoren wenden. Ja, wir sehen uns um 12:45 Uhr wieder hier, dann geht es in die Mittagspause und dann in den zweiten Teil über, sozusagen. 12 Uhr Mittagspause, 12:45 Uhr geht es dann hier weiter und dann verteilen wir euch. Und dann habe ich hier so Kopfhörer dabei, die sind nicht peinlich, habe ich gehört, soll ich sagen. Die darf man gerne tragen. Auf diesen Kopfhörern ist eine Simultantranslation, eine Übersetzung vom Englischen ins Deutsche. Denn die weitere Veranstaltung ist in Englisch, zumindest der Vormittag. Der Nachmittag dann wieder in Deutsch. Und jetzt würde ich eigentlich nochmal viel Spaß wünschen und übergeben an den Benjamin.
Yeah, let's start. As Christoph said, this part in the morning will be on English. My name is Benjamin. I'm working at the digitization office at the City Administration of Kiel. And with me are some colleagues also from mine, so they are supporting today, which I'm very happy of. Yeah, the internet turned 35 years this year. And it's broken. That's nothing I came up with. That's something no one less than Sir Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the World Wide Web, postulates. He identified two problems responsible for that. First, the extent of power concentration in the web. And there is a bunch of scientific work that's backing that. And the usage of your personal data, my personal data, for creating deep profiles, enabling targeted advertisement, and control what information you receive. And yesterday, we had a talk at the opening of the Digital Week. We had a talk about AI, artificial intelligence, and also there the topic came up about the concentration of power, and that this AI will probably escalate this problem even further. So today, we want to have a look at one puzzle piece that might help tackling those problems. In the morning, we like to talk about digital identities, data sovereignty, and trust. We have 5 speakers on stage today, and they are experienced on that field. In the end, we will dig deeper in a podium discussion or in a panel discussion. There will be 1 break, not 2 breaks, because we started a little later. And yeah, I'm happy that the mayor of the city of Kiel is here also today, and he will address some words of welcome, so I'm glad about that. He's not only my boss, but also he's patron of the Digital Week Kiel. He's head of Department for Economic Affairs in the city administration, president of the Association of Municipal Enterprises, and deputy president of the Association of German Cities, and I think a lot of more. Yeah, welcome. Dr. Ulf Kämpfer. Genau.
Yes, good morning everyone and welcome to Kiel Week, on Kiel Digital Week 24. When something very important happens in the world, we often can remember it our whole life, where we learned about the news. Most of you will know where they learned about the 9/11 attacks, the older ones among you, or where you learned about the death of Queen Elizabeth a few years ago. I remember something very well that happened in the year of 1983. I was a 10-year-old boy. I had the flu, was lying in the bed of my parents and listened to the radio news. And the news said that the German Constitutional Court invented a right of informational self-determination. And in the following days, even me as a 10-year-old boy realized that this was a very far-reaching, groundbreaking and bold decision. And this was even before the internet, that the court accepted or invented a basic freedom of data self-protection. That was very, very new at the time, and I think looking back 40 years, we cannot underestimate the importance of that decision. And so a lot of things have happened, and the importance of the internet, of digitalization has grown in an exponential way. And with the opportunities came the dangers and the vulnerabilities that we now everyone talks about. Yes? What about our identities of fake news, of trolls, of foreign powers trying to manipulate our public discussions, our election, and so on? We have ransom software, and so the more and more we rely on the internet of digitalization, the more and more our freedom, our societies become vulnerable. And so the sovereignty of our data and the protection of our data and the trustworthiness of the internet becomes very, very crucial for the fate of our modern society. So that's so good that we talk about these issues today, and we have foreign guests from Belgium, from Finland, from Estonia. Very welcome to you. And because we were always good in inventing new laws in Germany, but we want to learn about how can we manage it, and how can we manage the other side. Because in politics and in law, I became a trained lawyer and judge in constitutional law afterwards. There's always the other side. Yes, the pros, the potential of something new, and so the other side of data protection is that we need data to really use all the potential of artificial intelligence, of the internet. We need some ways that we can collect data, that we can use them, and so there's no way in just shut the internet down, or nobody can have any data of us. We have to protect them to use them, and the other way around. So that is something that I hope that maybe we get some clues from you today, how we as a city of Kiel or Schleswig-Holstein can use data in a very productive way, and on the other side foster the trust of the public that they are ready to give their data to us to make something out of it. So very important, very complicated questions. We have a lot of great experts here today, and so I hope you have great panels, great discussions, and a great, wonderful spring day here in Kiel. So welcome again, and a good, fruitful, smart city day here in Kiel. Thank you very much.
Welcoming words. And next up will be Florian Markus. He is born in Germany, but lives for now 9 years in Estonia. He has worked for the Estonian project, which has been a key driver of digitization at the country. And Estonia is now for several years considered as one, if not the one, most digitized society in the world. He is a digitalization expert. He is TEDx speaker, member of the roster of experts on e-governance at the United Nations Development Programme, and currently project manager at Proud Engineers. In his keynote speech today, Florian will give us an insight into how the public sector in Estonia provides proactive services to citizens, and what the future holds for EU member states when it comes to digital identities. Florian, please.
In the words of the very wise philosopher Obi-Wan Kenobi, hello there. Greetings from Estonia, and it's also nice to be back in Schleswig-Holstein as well. I'm actually from the south of Schleswig-Holstein. So it's lovely to see that stuff is happening in Germany as well, for a change. I want to talk about proactive services, and the very first question that most people ask is, well, what is proactive? What does that mean for me as a citizen, or as a resident, or as a company, or as a government official? And very briefly, number one, it's about knowing what I need, that the government understands that, hey, Florian is a father, and that might mean something. This might mean that he has to do something, that there is something that he is obliged to do with regards to the government. There might be something that he is entitled to. It might be some child benefits. It might be some kind of tax deduction, probably in Germany. It might be something that he or his relatives get. And then connected to knowing what I need, it's also about knowing when I actually need it. It's not just about having a website that says, like, by the way, the day that you become a father, you have to do this and you get to do this. It's about saying, right now, you just became a father, and here's what's going to happen next, and you don't have to lift a finger. That's the basic idea behind proactive services. And I think this is one area where most governments are not terribly proactive, if we want to use that word. If we look at the world right now, most governments in from the federal to the state to the municipal level are pretty passive. If they have digital stuff online, it is either non-reactive, meaning like opening hours. The job agency is open from Monday to Friday from 9 to 5. Ta-da, this is the website, that's it. Option number 2, it's passive but interactive, for example, such as the Elster, the tax declaration in Germany. You go online, you enter some data, something happens in the background, and the service has been completed of some sorts. But of course, the proactive level is about rethinking what my role as the government is. I have data. Even the least digitalized country in the world today knows, if not immediately, then after a few months or a few years, a child is born. It probably knows where people live. It probably knows what schools exist in the country. It probably knows when a car is registered. It doesn't talk about it between the different government authorities, but the data exists somewhere. Right? And so it's all about sort of mapping, number 1, where does the data sit today? And number 2, what can we do based on that? In general, we need 3 basic aspects to make proactive services happen. Number 1, you need an electronic identity. This is something that for the longest time has been a sincere struggle in Germany. First, there was no electronic identity, and then for many years there was an opt-in electronic identity. There was the beautiful moment for, was it 10 years or something, where German citizens have been challenged whenever they had to renew their ID. Would you like to unlock your electronic ID card? And then the average citizen replies, doesn't even say no, says, for what? Because there were no services connected to it. Maybe there was 1, maybe there were 2, but there was not much more. So for the citizen, the question is like, why would I do this? And then on the other hand of that equation, you've got the government service providers that say, well, we have no users. Why would we develop anything? Why would we put money and time into this? Like, we have like 30,000 people that have this thing across Germany. Why would we do this? So you've got this, and this is all across different government parts. You've got these chicken and egg questions that the German government fundamentally was unwilling to tackle until very recently. So now also in Germany, you have a legally binding electronic identity and a unique identifier, a number that represents you as a person. In Estonia, this has been existent since 2001. We have copied this from the Finns, with one exception. They also made it opt-in back then, and we realized that they were wasting money and nobody was using the services, so we made it compulsory from the start. Compulsory for citizens, but also compulsory for residents who are living here in Estonia for more than 3 months. So I, as a dirty immigrant coming to Estonia, also had to register with the police and also get my electronic identity, because the government knows if there is a person that lives in Estonia that has no electronic identity, he will be treated like a second-class citizen. He will live in a parallel society where the digital services that exist for one layer do not exist for the second layer. Pointless. Yeah. So EID. Number 2, data exchange. I need to make sure that all the data that we have is actually shareable with all of the different stakeholders in the government. In Estonia, we have something called the X-Road. It's a data exchange platform that, again, say it with me, exists since 2001. And it helps all the different entities encrypt and automatically exchange data between each other. Not just government institutions, but also, get this, private sector. Because it turns out that citizens don't really want to do anything with the government. The ideal number of government to citizen interactions is 0. The government wants the citizen to do stuff. The citizen doesn't want to do stuff with the government. But with the private sector, it's a very different picture. I want to do online shopping. I want to do online banking. So the logic of where I draw my users from, it's at least partially in the private sector. So private sector must be part of this data exchange platform as well, within the rules and regulations of privacy and data protection, of course. And this brings me to the legal framework. In Estonia, we have something called the once-only policy. There's always only one agency that is allowed to store a particular piece of data, such as my address. Every other government agency in Estonia must delete my address. If they need my address, they must use the X road to get my data from that one authority that has it. The result is, number one, I don't duplicate my address everywhere, and it might get out of date. You know, I might move to a new location, then I will notify 50% of the government agencies, but the other 50% still think that I live in the old place from 5 years ago. In Estonia, this cannot possibly happen because we always only store the data in one place across the data landscape. And this brings us to proactive services in Estonia. 9 months ago, our daughter Emilia was born. This is her entry. She got a personal identification code as well. She currently only has Estonian citizenship because it's really hard to apply for German citizenship from abroad. I was sent by the German embassy 6 PDFs that I must print out and then be present at the embassy with the baby in front. So I haven't gotten around to it yet. But 3 days after she was born, my wife and I got a notification that says, "Congratulations on the birth of your child. We know that your child was born and that you are the parents because when the baby pops out," I think that's how that happens, she gets a personal code from birth. This personal code is connected to the 2 personal codes of the 2 parents because we are the legal guardians. We get the notification. "Congratulations on the birth of your child. We know you are the parents." We know the law in Estonia, and the law says that you must get child benefit payments. So here are the child benefit payments. Can you just tell us your bank account number? And then we send the money there, the end. There is no application, there are no forms to print out, there is nothing to go through, there is no bureaucracy. It's a service because government knows when you are entitled to receive a service. And you can go further with this. The same trigger, childbirth, you can now say, hey, we also know that every child, by law, must go to primary school at some point. It's the law. Yeah? And we also know people's addresses. So we know that Florian lives in address 123. We're going to send him a notification. Congratulations again on the birth of your child. Here are the 3 closest primary schools to your location. Click on one of them, and we will reserve a place for your child at that school 6 years into the future. Which means that all of a sudden, the schools can start with resource planning. Hey, 7 of our 14 biology teachers are retiring in the next 6 years. We need more biology teachers. We can start with incentive schemes at national universities today because we know for a fact that these people are gone in 6 years. What I'm trying to say with this is, this has nothing to do with science fiction. It's about connecting like 5 data points that you have, all of you in this room. Yeah, that most governments around the world have. It's about connecting them and thinking, not what do I as the government want, but what does the citizen want? Yeah. And this brings us to Estonia's plans. Some of these are already in action, some of these are in planning. Basically, proactive services from starting a business to military service. What happens in death? So afterwards, your personal code gets deactivated, and then the succession and the will and all of those things, they come into action. Marriage is being implemented right now. My partner takes over my surname. She gets a notification, hey, we noticed that you have changed your surname. We already ordered a new passport and a new ID card with your new surname on it because you need a valid ID document. So it just makes sense, but you have to think about it first. This brings us very briefly to internationalization. There are some exciting things that are already happening today. For example, because Estonia and Finland work on a very similar X-Road platform, when I move to Finland, I register my place of residence there. I am automatically unregistered in Estonia, and if Teemu would come to Tallinn from Helsinki, the same would happen in reverse. If I go to, and this is not proactive, but it can be in the future, if I go to Portugal with my Estonian ID card, I go to a pharmacy, I can get my prescription medicine prescribed by an Estonian doctor in a Portuguese pharmacy. And so all of these things mean you can see that there is a desire for international services. We have a European Union data space where we all follow the same laws and regulations. So none of this is make-believe or some sort of pipe dream 10 years into the future. It can all happen today if we think about it in a structured manner. What is new, and what I was also asked to quickly talk about, is eIDAS 2.0. Now, the first question is, does anybody know what is eIDAS 1.0? Effectively, it's all about identity regulations in the EU. It really means that with our eIDs, with our e-perso and so on, we should be able to use the same document in other digital environments around Europe. And eIDAS 2.0 pushes this further and says by 2027, all governments must accept the different ID cards and so on. And by the way, all the so-called gatekeepers, Facebook, Google, Amazon, and so on, they must also accept it. So maybe in a few years, well, ideally in a few years, you should be able to log into your Amazon account or something, go shopping just with your electronic ID card provided by the government. This will drive usability for the citizens. And it also means data sovereignty and portability. So you now, or in the future, you should be able to choose what exactly you share with a particular service provider. If I go to the liquor store, I would like to buy some alcohol, somebody wants to know whether I'm actually 18, traditionally I would show them my ID card, but there is my name, there is my age, there's my, address information on the German one, because you are so privacy-minded or something, and your height and your eye color. Anyway, but how about just swiping the card on a device and then the other person that is checking your age only sees your age, doesn't see your name, doesn't see your, well, photo would make sense, obviously. But, so to limit the data that is being shared in a particular instance. That is the aim, or one of the aims under eIDAS 2.0. And that would be all from my side. I am German. I must finish on time, otherwise I will lose my German citizenship. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, be it now or later, I'm looking forward to talking to you. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Florian. Yeah, are there any questions already in the audience to Florian? I might have a question. Oh, Jonas, yes.
Sure.
You don't even have to share the age. You just have to share I'm old enough.
Yes. Yes.
But on the other hand, what it shares always is your ID. And that allows Google, Amazon, and at least the big ones to really create better profiles than today. How can we make sure that this design flaw is fixed?
Well, it's you can put it's not a bug, it's a feature, right? You can right now set up 3 Amazon accounts with 3 separate email addresses if you would like that. They would say that, well, that's not really in the spirit of what we're trying to do, and it would be fair enough. You are still free to use Amazon or not, would be the quick answer to your question, and support local businesses instead. But yeah, it is an intrinsic part of eIDAS 2.0, and you're absolutely correct. I would argue, or I would say that's probably some of the lobbying work that has gone into eIDAS 2.0. It is by no means flawless. Well, we've got OZG 2.0 on the way, except for the Bundesrat. But yeah, you never know. Anything can happen.
There was one more question. Timo, please.
Thanks. Very nice keynote. Thank you very much. If you ask people in Germany why we live so far behind the move in terms of digitalization of the administration, people say it's several reasons. We're compared to Estonia far bigger. We have
No, for the
Yeah, we
stream,
need
I
for
think.
the live
for the
stream.
stream.
Yeah, thanks.
And we have the problem with bureaucracy and Beamtentum and such things.
Yes.
But I'm not sure if those reasons are really the key reasons why we are so much behind. So can you name some of the key success factors that Estonia had?
Yeah.
Besides that they started 20 years ago, so way
Sure.
earlier than we did.
Well, you had a digital signature law before we did. You have one in German parliament since the 1990s. So the three arguments that you brought were, or excuses that are sometimes brought, size, federalism, and public officials. Bullshit, and probably fair. So size does not. India is more digital than you guys. Brazil is more digital than you guys, which brings me to federalism. Those two countries are also federal. I'm not a big fan of federalism, but one of the advantages is you can also pilot project in one part of the country. So if Schleswig-Holstein and Hamburg today wake up and say, let's do everything digital in the next 5 years, you can do that. Actually, those two and some other federal states are part of Dataport. You guys could all stand up together and say, let's develop something for this, some data exchange layer for this, blah, 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 blah. You can do this. So there are some good opportunities there. With regards to the public officials, I think this is one of the challenges. It's really hard to fire someone for bad performance in Germany. So what is my motivation to keep being innovative? And I think it's a bit too safe as an environment. And also, in Germany, there's always the excuse of privacy, which is a horrible excuse, because in Estonia, I've got a data tracker that tells me every single time which government authority looks at what part of my data, when and why. I don't have that sort of transparency in Germany at all. And then last but not least, digitalization is a job killer. Number one, not true, creates different jobs, for now at least. Number two, even if it were true, you guys are running out of people. If you look at the demographic trajectory, you are losing by sort of a couple of million people in the public sector over the next 10 years. And they will not be replaceable just because of demographics. So the more you can automate stuff today, the better you will look in the governments, in the public sector over the next 10 years, easily.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Florian will be here for further questions. So thank you again.
Thank you.
So next up is Teemu Roponen. I hope I pronounced it correct. He's from Finland and general manager and director of growth at MyData Global. As director of growth, he is responsible for the stakeholder management. For the stakeholder management, and he's an evangelist for the MyData cause. MyData is an award-winning international non-profit organization, and they help people in organizations to benefit from personal data, where human centricity is one of the core values of MyData. Teemu will tell us today about MyData's mission and how they approach it. So, Teemu, welcome on stage. Thanks.
Here is to seek for collaboration. We're going to get into some great use cases in the later presentations. I'm here to talk about how we might be able to collaborate together, because as Jonas rightly said, it's not something that any city, any organization can do alone. It's nice to be in Kiel, my first time here. Congratulations on the promotion to the Bundesliga.
That's not my line.
So we know this, right? Personal data is everywhere. It's collected by huge amounts every single day. It's connected, related to our learning, related to our driving or public transport or electricity, retail, the apps we use. Hugely massive amounts of data. And how can we make use of that? That's what we are here to talk about. And cities have a special role in this, right? So like cities are increasingly dependent on that personal data. And at the same time, like cities really should be at the forefront, being exemplary, as the city of Lyon has said. We need to make sure that the smart city movement does not become just a tech and tech surveillance movement, but in the end, it's all about proactive services. It's all about doing better services and serving the citizens better, not about this big tech surveillance. So cities are absolutely important in this, and you probably know this. Classic cases where this has failed is, for example, Toronto. I don't know if everybody has heard it a million times or not, but there, for example, not having transparency, having Google come over and take over smart city planning caused massive uproar. And this is happening elsewhere as well. If the citizens are not involved in designing the services, and not just the services, the whole governance, you're going to end up in losing trust, and you're going to have angry citizens. And a lot of cities that are doing it well. Estonia is definitely doing it well, and we in Finland always wonder how can they do it even faster and better than we can. But they can. There must be some magic. But in terms of cities, Barcelona, we hear later from the region of Flanders, which does some amazing innovative things. There is another way to be more democratic. And as the minister-president has said it, here that when visiting Finland, he was stating that okay, we must be able to do better. We must be able to build trust. We must be able to give citizens control over their data, and that's great. When we are getting to the very top-level politicians saying this, it's likely that things will be moving. So for cities, there's huge opportunities, right? First of all, cities typically have a lot of data about their citizens, about where people are living and so on. Cities are also great places. They're responsible for the economic development, innovations that are happening. On trust, it might depend a little bit on the country, that are cities trusted or not. For example, in the Nordics, we do tend to trust the government quite a bit, but there is oddly, in many places that we give our data rather to big tech companies than for example, the governments. But again, cities are working together with other cities. They're working very multi-sectorally and working together with the private sector. So cities indeed have a ton that they should and could do. And we see this in all kinds of consultancy reports, and I'm not gonna, maybe you can see, maybe not gonna go into that so deeply due to the time. However, one key thing that I think we're all on a mission to solve is this issue. This was from the Finnish independence fund Sitra, who have done a great job in what they call fair data economy, more or less this human-centric data economy. Studies in Germany, Netherlands, France, and Finland. And again, there are slight variations of this, but let's say over a third of people are not believing that their data is handled properly. It's an obstacle to economic growth. People are stopping their transactions online with the government or with businesses because they are not believing that their data is handled properly. There must be a way to do better. So MyData is both an organization that I represent, but also more of a, let's say, philosophy and thinking that comes back from the times of open data about a decade ago. So it's all about giving empowerment, empowering the individuals. Like the mayor said, we want that data to be used. We want the personal data to be used for those proactive services, for my benefit, to make my life easier, but we want to make sure that we are respecting our fundamental rights. And that's not always happening in spirit anyway. By the letter of the law it might be, but in spirit with many of the big tech. So MyData Global role is to drive and connect, bring together people who believe in this user-centric or human-centric approach. Together build knowledge, do faster. Effectively, we are competing with the surveillance capitalism model of Google and the others. So we must be as good or even better if we want to change the world around. What we're all about on a top level is building a fair, prosperous, sustainable approach to the digital society. And key part of that is giving humans control, making sure that people are getting value and people have a right to say that, okay, yes, I don't want you to have my age, but you can have that data, like we just discussed, that, okay, I'm over 18. But having people getting, setting the agenda, how their data is used. And then for organizations, the ethical use of data must always be the most attractive solution. And kind of 3 fundamental shifts that need to happen for this. And I think a lot of those legal and a lot of those building blocks are starting to be there. First, our rights, they need to be not just formal rights, but they need to be actionable or one click. And this was something that with the GDPR, we got lots of really good legislation, but some of that real time, like I want my data now, I want my data to be ported now, that element was missing. It was lobbied down by some of the big tech. Some of the new legislation helps into that. We want to move from formal to actionable rights. Then the other thing, which I think in Germany, but also many other countries has existed, is this thinking that people need to be protected. Yes, that is true, but at the same time, like the mayor said, we want the data to be used. We want people to be empowered, and that's a kind of a fundamental shift in thinking that, okay, we want to actually empower people, not only protect them. We can do both. And then moving from these closed big tech silos, from closed ecosystems into more open ecosystems so that I can build on top of each other, or it is easy to switch from one service to another. Has anybody ever tried getting rid of Google? It's damn hard. And that shouldn't, excuse my French, but that really shouldn't be so difficult. If I want to move from one provider to another, we should not have such lock-in as we do at the moment. So this type of thinking is actually relevant right now. It's relevant on local levels. For example, in Helsinki, who has stated a long time ago that they want to go into this direction. It's relevant on national levels. We have governments of Netherlands or Korea, of Estonia, and others moving very much into this direction. Flanders definitely, and we will hear more about that. And then on an EU level, there is a lot happening, not just the regulation, but also the whole EU data strategy, which has noted that this human-centric approach to personal data is a promising movement that gives benefits in all kinds of sectors, in smart cities, in mobility, in health and wellness, just about any sector. And many of the interesting things, by the way, happen in that intersection between different domains. So there's a lot of cities and there's a lot missing here that are doing great things. For example, Porto also, and Flanders, of course, and many others that are doing some parts of it. And it's a big mix to go from this whole shift. Not any one city is doing everything, but some elements bringing more control to the users. And why should cities care? If somebody is interested, I have a great report from the city of Espoo in Helsinki, which is about the size of Kiel, about a 300,000 city next to Helsinki. And indeed talking about that, hey, we can use MyData to personalize, to target services for the proactivity that was just discussed in the previous presentation, for automation, for customer segmentation. There's lots of areas in which we can do better services by using better that personal data. Similarly, Helsinki is talking about their mission is to be most functional city in the world, and that's all about the data flows. In their data strategy, they have set out that by 2025, they want their data to be most used in the world. And it is definitely not used as in kind of the big tech companies making use of it, but rather providing an alternative model. Just very quickly going to talk about this Lyon case. The city of Lyon in France has done a long good job in personal data. They have been researching it. Right now, they are looking at taking data from gas, water, and electricity consumption in households. So they are connecting 3 IoT devices, essentially provided by different companies, and bringing that into a dashboard that is telling you how much water, gas, electricity you use, how much money you are spending on it, and able to give some tips and sales discounts to drive sustainability. And the interesting thing that I think that they have done is they have actually gamified it. So they have made this into a game, and what you have then is kids in families saying that, hey, turn off the light, turn off the water, don't take such a long shower, so that they can get extra points and extra avatars and things. It's making the whole fight against the climate change into something personal and at times something fun. And I think that's that type of experimentation, that type of work I think we need. Yes, of course, we want to lessen the bureaucracy and so on, but we also need to have a little bit of fun in our lives. So I'm really excited about that. There's some discussions later on about employment. I'm going to skip those. We don't have time for that much. But if you're interested, pull my sleeve. In Finland, we have a... the cities are responsible for the unemployment services. So by providing data from your job, your learnings, and from your hobbies, we create like digital CV, which can be used to help apply for jobs, but also give you some upskilling. We know, and I think we get into this later, we have a whole bunch of new legislation that's come up. They talk about the Big Five, but in addition to the Big Five, there's the EIDAS 2, which was mentioned before, and there's the Interoperable Europe Act. So there's anybody working in the cities, there's at least 7 new big pieces of legislation right now, and that can be a little bit exhausting. So that's like one of the reasons why I'm sorry, I'm slipping here. I invite you to join also the MyData community, where companies, schools, academic institutions, cities, government organizations are joining together to collaborate, to make sense of this, to develop joint projects, to do joint advocacy work, to understand legislation better, to understand use cases better, because it is a difficult mess that we are dealing with. It's a good mess, but it's still a difficult mess right now. We're operating worldwide right now, so amongst our members, we have coming from about 50 countries on 6 continents. Having hub, you can't see the map there, but you can guess that that's Europe, right? Where the hotspot and where this personal data has been on the agenda and will continue to be on the agenda. 2 very next steps that you might be interested in. There is another network, not run by us, but by something called the Cities Coalition for Digital Rights. They are right now running workshops on how to do MyData in cities, and using examples from Solid and from others. These workshops are coordinated by the city of Helsinki and a tech company called Futurist. And then a month from now, the Open and Agile Smart Cities Network has their event in Rotterdam. And Open and Agile Smart Cities is a network of 150 cities working on this topic. And there the interesting piece is what they call MIM4, or Minimum Interoperability Mechanism on Trust. So driving that each city, again, does not do things on their own, but uses a kind of a standard way to develop minimum interoperability so that services work together amongst the different cities. Feel free to pull my sleeve. I'm here to help you connect with other organizations, connect with great ideas, find use cases that are relevant to you. And thanks again for having me here in Kiel. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks Timo for the inspiring talk. Are there any questions you'd like to ask? Florian. he has a mic.
Thanks. Okay, now this one. Hello, hello. Yes, awesome. Thank you so much for the presentation. Obviously, privacy and data protection is one of those aspects where citizens should get more control. You mentioned also the GDPR in this context. The result of the GDPR was, for example, that whenever I go on a website, I get the cookie banner, I get to decide what happens and what doesn't happen. From anecdotal experience, it seems like 99% of people say, accept all, I want to read the news about Beyonce's new baby or something, it's really important for my, and I'll throw away my data rights regardless. So to what extent do you think this is a technical challenge or sort of cities agreeing and so on? And to what extent do you think there's also a lot of citizen education that has to be done?
Yeah, I mean, there's well, we have talked before about the Americans have you know, their favorite food. I don't know if you have it in France. The bacon, lettuce, tomato sandwich. Sorry, did I say you had it in France? I did. The bacon, lettuce, tomato sandwich, BLTS. For us, we talk about business, legal, tech, and society perspective. So it's definitely a multi-perspective thing. The tech might be the easiest point. So yes, definitely educating the citizens. And unfortunately, you know, kids, you know, when you're age 7 and you start playing games or whatever at 6, you're already learning that, hey, if I want to check out the football scores, I need to click on yes, I accept, because that's the fastest way to go. So we're really indoctrinated into that yes, I accept. So there's a lot to be done there to educate the citizens. However, it shouldn't be the responsibility of the citizens only. I mean, governments need to do a better job there to develop services in a way that they are respecting these rights. So yes, you need elements of both. And already GDPR, you are right, it has turned kind of upside down. In theory, it gave us a lot of new interesting rights. In practice, it has become a pop-up hell, if you will. And for example, the data portability, which is, you know, moving data from one place to another, that element of GDPR was really watered down by lobbying. Now with Data Governance Act and Data Act, for example, there is a lot more room, a lot more new enabling regulation to do exactly that, to do this type of data sharing.
All right. Another question from you. Yes, please.
Thank you very much for the inspiring talk. I would like to know, what's your vision for MyData.org, so in 5 or 10 years? Is it a kind of European-wide open data platform? Is it a set of regulations that used in all European or even worldwide countries? Where do you see that organizations, so in 5 to 10 years?
Well, so I mean, our goal is to make sure that we can bring together, help facilitate this movement, and there will be. And we're technology neutral and ourselves a non-profit, so we are basically driving this thinking forward. Right now, for example, the European data spaces movement, which we didn't talk much about. There's a lot of money invested in that. It's coming from industry at first, like industrial use cases. So luckily we are in the data spaces support center, making sure that the human-centric elements are taken into that architectural development and so on, and hopefully the data spaces movement also flies with a human-centric approach. And then we see promising implementations. For example, right now, many of our members are building on Solid. That's not the only way to go. There's multiple other ones, SSI and a whole like an umbrella of technologies, and we're kind of independent of that per se, being tech neutral. And in some way, ironically, we look at the public sector to lead in the sense that there is a lot of business model changes potentially for a lot of the businesses, but for governments, it should be relatively easy to give users control. You can do better services and save costs, and that's a pretty good business case often. You don't need to radically change the value chains. I don't know if I answered your question a little bit.
All right. Yeah, out of time reasons, I would say thank you, Timo.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will take a short break of 10 minutes. After the break, we will get to know some implementations which have data sovereignty at the core. 2 prototypes from Germany, and we will going to know how the region of Flanders enabled 6 million people, or at least increase the data empowerment for the use of their personal data. Yeah, I'd like you to encourage to participate in the online poll. You can use the QR codes, they are hanging around here. And also they should be available for you who joined in the live stream. So 10 minutes from now, see you in a moment. Thanks. All right, then, yeah, welcome back also on the screen in the live stream. We want to start now. And as I said, we are going to see some implementations now. So next up is Andreas Both. He is a computer scientist, and after finishing his PhD, he became technical project lead semantic web project at Unister. After several years of experience at other companies, the science field, and working as a freelancer, he is currently professor at the Leipzig University of Applied Sciences, and he works at DATEV, which is a software company with focus on the tax consultant market. There he is head of research. Andreas will tell us about a prototype for a government-to-citizen data space based on the open source Solid project, also invented by Sir Tim Berners-Lee to fix the broken internet. Please, Andreas.
Yeah, thanks, Benjamin, for the nice introduction. Yeah, as you can see, we are now switching to use cases. We have heard a lot about the bright future, so many things that are possible, so many things, so many role models that we have where we can take the inspiration, how it, what can be done. Now I'd like to talk about how it can be done in a way that is, yeah, matching the German use case, to put it that way, a use case where we have a high fragmentation of responsible authorities, of political players and so on, because for all the people in the room who are not from Germany, in Germany we have a division of power between the state, the federal state, the local states, and the cities as well. The districts where everything, where every activity has some kind of yeah, local responsibility or federal or state responsibility. Okay, let's have a look into these use cases. To actually show you my use case, I would like to introduce you to Anna. Anna is an AI made-up German female who has a dream, and as she is a German, she thinks about 2 things. First, she's thinking about buying a house, and secondly, of course, she is very cautious about her data, so data privacy is very important for her. So typical German. So while talking about Anna, I will not focus on the data privacy issues first. Let's have a look into her idea about her dream house. So while doing something like that, she of course would have to fill some forms to actually buy something, to announce something, to get the permission from some kind of authority. In this particular case, we assume that she gets a form from the authority A, where she has to write down everything and provide all the information. So just input some data into the process. And this is actually working well, so she's happy thereafter, sends her form to authority A, everything seems to be fine from her part, and she seems to be like 1 step closer to her dream house. But like 2 weeks later, she's receiving another letter, and this letter is now coming from authority B. She has not heard something about authority B. Now she has to do another form. Okay, she thinks, let's start with the form. Let's have a look into all of the data that is required here. And then she recognizes, oh, most of the data are actually shared already. So how is that possible? As a typical German, you know this is happening all the time. So typically like 80% of the data you already have shared with someone. So why is this the case? But of course, as Anna would like to have your dream house, she is actually doing all the stuff and then sends it to the authority B. But of course, that was a very tiring process, so she's not happy anymore. But at least it's done, as she's thinking so. Because 2 weeks later, she has another she receives another letter, this time from authority C. Authority C is requesting additional data, of course, and she of course recognizes that most of the data is already shared with authority B and C. So why is it shared again? There's no need into putting this into the forms. There might be digital forms or might be paper forms, doesn't matter. Most of the time, all of the data, as I said already, is already recognized or is already present on some of these parts. So as Anna is smart, she thinks, okay, there might be another solution to actually make this happen. Why do I have to put all the data always in these kinds of forms? Shouldn't there be something similar like a vault, like a safe, where I put all my data in? And if someone is asking for this particular data, then I just share this particular data. And only this particular data, not anything more. And while sharing all of this information, she at one point in time, of course, would have all the information present. If something is missing, she's actually putting this into a data vault and everything would be fine, right? It seems to be like possible, at least, and actually it is possible. But before we jump into that part, the story I just told is not far away from the actual reality. You see here, at least as a German, you have heard about this problem still it's not done. But last year it was a huge issue in Germany because we had to finish something that is addressing the property that you have, the property tax that you have, which should be changed. There was a decision by a federal court that decided everything needs to be redone. And of course, we have had no process that actually were integrating all the data. Instead, all the citizens have to carry the data from one place to another place. So that was actually needs to be done, and this was really, really complicated for most of the people. So we have several pain points here. Of course, we see that the governmental processes in Germany are typically driven by the citizens. We have just heard that from Timo that should be a proactive, or also from Florian, should be a proactive task, but typically that's not the case. We see that all of the authorities are typically not automatically interacting. They also send the data from one place to another place, hopefully in a digital form, sometimes also in paper form, so there's a file sent via snail mail to another place, and so on and so on. But this should not be a blame game. This whole talk should be about how can we fix this. And that's why I would like to introduce you to the Solid project. Solid is a particular technology already announced and mentioned in several of the talks, also in the introduction, introduced by Tim Berners-Lee and others, that is intended to fix the broken internet, the broken web actually. The broken web in the case that we have a centralized data storage, that we have not created this kind of knowledge base that is interconnected, where I can share data when I want, and I'm always in power to actually control what is done with my data. This is to lay the technical foundations for all of these use cases is the intention of the Solid project. For the Solid project, we are talking for the intention of the Solid project, we are talking about giving the autonomy back to the individuals, so everybody can do everything with his data, but the person can decide what needs to be, what is done with the data. Data privacy and data sharing is the most important, intents that are behind the Solid project. And from the technical foundation, maybe there are some techies are also participating here. We are talking here about the technology that is built on top of the resource description framework, so also a web technology that is well established since more than 15 years. So the focus of the Solid technologies, or the Solid initiative, is to enable people to store their data in a secure place on the web. We call this the Solid pods. That's the only term you need from now on. Data sharing is the intention, and users always should be in control of the data and should be capable to check what was done with their data and how to actually do this. So let's switch to a particular use case to show what is happening here. Let's assume that this is an application right now. That's a traditional web application. Then Anna might have used this application, and while doing so, she typically needs an identity that is tightly connected to this application. She also will insert some data and maybe get some data from the application, but still data is inside of the application. So that's a traditional web application. Everybody who has already built or used something like that, this was typically the typical case. In the solid environment, we are doing it in a different way. The intention is the following. We are breaking up the three components that are part of every application. So we have the business logics on the one hand side, then the data on the other hand side, and the identity, any kind of identity. We already heard an European identity, an identity that is some kind of identity can be used. And the solid technologies are intended to actually connect all of these things on demand, not by the developer, not done before the deployment by the developer, but on demand when the user arrives. So in our case, Anna can actually configure what kind of identity she is using over here, might be different ones, and what kind of data she would like to insert into the application. And this is done without knowing any kind of technical stuff, just by saying, I would like to share this data with this application. So it's not about sharing, not only about sharing data between different persons, it's also about sharing the data with the business logic, so with the application on demand. So what can we learn from here? So Solid is intended to break up this kind of tight coupling between data, the user identity, and the application. And this can be, of course, we can apply this to any kind of use case, but we have done this for a G2C use case, so for government to citizen use case. In this scenario, we assume that Anna is available, has her identity, has her personal solid pod, so her personal data, and is going to one particular G2C application. Let's say it's from authority A, as I introduced earlier. Now, she can grant the access to the application A. This application can now take the data from the personal solid pod and can produce whatever needs to be done. And this is what we would call a solid application. So this is one on-demand solid application that was done just because she has shared the data and shared her identity. In our use case, we have several situations where the government cannot just share the data, just provide the data, because then data might be changed. To keep it verifiable, we implemented it like that the authority is creating something like a new data vault, new solid pod that's managed by the authority A. So let's assume we have the text declaration, then this might be updated every year, and every time the government authority A is sharing the data again in the solid pod. So that's done automatically. You do have access to this particular data. And of course, this is like integrated into the solid pod of Anna, but in our particular case, she cannot change the data, as I mentioned earlier. So if we look into the authority B, then this application, of course, would also like to have access. But now there's an interesting part. If Anna grants the access not only to her personal solid pod, but also to the read-only solid pod from authority A, then additional information is available from now on. Because this information comes from another authority. This is like creating now a connection between authority A and authority B, although they never have talked to each other. Just because Anna has brought her data to the citizen, has brought the data to the next authority automatically in her data vault, in a web-based data vault in a solid pod. So then we have a next on-demand application, and also in my use case, authority B is sharing some additional data. And of course, you can imagine that we can iterate this many, many times. We are creating now a government data space or G2C data space. For example, in the G2C application of the authority C is capable of actually accessing all of this information if Anna is actually granting the access rights to read this information. She has not to do so, but in our use case, we assume that she is doing this because now the G2C application C can actually automatically integrate this into the process, such that there's another application created, and of course another read-only solid pod is also created over here. So now we have like 3 different solid pods created by governments for a particular citizen. So all of this data can be reused. We don't know who will reuse it, but we keep the power. We empower the citizens to actually see the data. They know what data is recognized, what data is available, and also empower them to share the data on demand if they would like. And we don't know who will actually have access to this kind of data. So now a particular prototype, that was not just a made-up example, it's actually an implemented prototype that we already have done. We have implemented this for 12 administrative authorities, where all of them are interconnected somehow. This has particular features, and here just one screenshot. So all of them have particular applications, and we have made up data, of course. So here's no real data, of course. In this particular use case, for example, the first one is, oh, that's not perfectly visible. The first part of the form is filled in automatically, asking for confirmation from the citizen. The second one is filled in automatically from the personal solid pod of the citizen. The second one is from a read-only solid pod, and the third one might also be available, but in our use case, the citizen had decided not to share this kind of data, instead just filling it manually because it's required for the process. So all of these things are possible. The source code is available as a prototype, so you can actually see that this is possible. We have all the technology available, such that we are enabled to create this kind of data space for G2C use cases, where all the authorities can share their data, where all of the data is reusable, and as I said earlier, the citizens are empowered to share the data, but also are in control and see what kind of data is recognized, what kind of data is available, such that Anna can be happy because all of her processes can be, after some data collection, all of her processes can, or government process can be done automatically. Of course, they're not just these kind of use cases. Just talked about these use cases because it was like the intention of this talk, the intention of this day. But this is, of course, is also possible to enable B2B and B2C use cases and also C2C use cases. Many of these things are also researched in my group and also on the company side. And in particular, in this context, I would at the end now send special thanks to the Federal Ministry for Interior, Bundesinnenministerium, and also for the ITZ Bund Informationstechnikzentrum Bund, who have supported this work in a research contract. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Andreas. Are there any questions? Yes.
I'm going to keep talking about proactive services. No, it's actually a relevant question. Do I understand? Please correct me if I'm wrong. The only way to do proactive services where the citizen would just be approached about stuff would be a read-only pod with all of the data that I would, or is there some way that I can make proactive services without the interaction from the citizen happen?
Sure.
Okay.
So that was just the use case I introduced. I used for the motivation. Yeah. But of course, as we have seen here, so the data is available, so the data is accessible, and the only difference to now is that the data can be shared over here. We also have the additional standards that are built on, technical standards that are built on top, so like linked data notifications, if you're aware of that standard. That, of course, is also possible to integrate, such that people can actually notify each other if something has changed. Just that they have some kind of event-driven application and have this kind of proactive movement. But It was not part of my use case, that's why I skipped this from the talk.
All good, thank you so much.
All right, another question. Yes, please.
Always the same people. What's the concrete service of the solid technology? Is it a platform, or is it an interface, or is it a standard? Is it all together? But what's the concrete service or product?
Yeah, so thanks, that's a very good question. I was skipping all the technical details, so now I can actually introduce this. Yeah, so the solid technology family, to put it that way, is a standard. Basically, it's a group of standards. But as for all W3C standards, it's not really a standard. It's more like a technical recommendation that needs some kind of technical feasibility. So that's why, as for all of the W3C standards like HTML, CSS, and so on, there it was an implementation required. So it's not just like I would not like to put this job this word, but for Gaia X, where you have all the paper but not the implementation. Here for the WC standard, you always need the implementation too, and we already have several providers for all of these technical components I mentioned. For the solid pods, for example, you have several open source providers, several commercial providers, and so on and so on. So we have all of the technical infrastructure available here, and I think we will hear something about these particular use cases from the next two talks, where some of these components are used already.
All right, thanks, Andreas. So, up next is Benjamin Degenhardt. He's based in Berlin. He works at the Digital Service GmbH des Bundes as a software engineer. His employer supported him in taking a class at the University of Ghent around linked data and solid. There he created a prototype that can show you which state subsidies you are eligible for. With 3 others, he co-founded Förderfunke, and he is knowledge engineer at this company. Förderfunke aims to bring the prototype into production. Today, Benjamin will give us insights into this prototype and work at Förderfunke. Benjamin.
Thanks, Benjamin. Also, a first real use case of split screen on the phone for me. The timer up here and my notes down there. That's why I'm gonna keep looking there. Yeah, it's. I also will keep talking about proactive services, Florian. That's great that I'm coming after you. Some people probably thought, oh, can we implement this in Germany? Because we have very different sensibilities to data privacy, and in some parts, for good reason, the government cannot combine these data sources. There is things on the way, of course, with Registermodernisierung and once-only principle here. But what I'm presenting to you is basically an alternative to this, or a side project while it is hopefully still going on. Or you could also think of it as a constructive provocation from the civil society, a tech project. And yeah, we're a solid use case, I think. We're a good solid use case, but we're not using it yet. I will explain later why. And the logos down here mean we are sort of halfway through the prototype funding period now. These are funds from the Federal Ministry of Education and Research that we're getting. And who is we? That's the team, Ben, Vanessa, and I. We know each other from Tech for Germany 2020 from a fellowship we did. This is a frame from a video we made for the Creative Bureaucracy Festival explaining the idea. And as you can see from our job titles, we all kept our main jobs and reduced it to part-time to do this prototype fund. Yeah, let me start with some questions. You don't have to answer it, more like rhetorical questions. Do you know all the state benefits you or your family are eligible for? For me, it's a definite no. Do you know someone who found out too late that they were eligible for something? I also have these cases in my family and friends. Wouldn't it be great if the relevant information finds you instead of having to know about it and having to search for it? These are the 2 things that also correlate with your slides, Florian. That was really nicely put. So that is kind of what we're trying to do. Before, really hard to understand all of these data points out there, and after you get this powerful tool that helps you make sense of it. Or put in another way, what are we doing? We're informing citizens proactively about state benefits and subsidies they're eligible for. Why? In Germany, only every 3rd child eligible for Kinderzuschlag, child allowance, is receiving it, simply because the parents don't know about it or don't think they're eligible, which was the case for me, by the way, until a few months ago. And even more drastic number, 12 billion in home health care go unclaimed because the people don't know that they're eligible for it. So these are some crazy numbers, I think. And how are we doing this? We're automatically checking requirement profiles against user profiles. A requirement profile is sort of encoding the eligibility conditions. So for Kinderzuschlag, your kid needs to be below 25, and all of these rules, basically. And behind it is sort of my own frustration when I got a daughter in 2021, and we got so lost in the whole Elterngeld stuff and made some mistakes that cost us around €1,000 per month, actually, in Elterngeld. And how can this be done better? And how can it be possible that in 2024, when Silicon Valley is fantasizing about artificial general intelligence, it's still so hard to get these very relevant basic information that make all our everyday life better? And just to say where we sort of stop in the prototype fund is we're only making people aware of these. They still have to go to that website and apply like they usually do. Later on, we would like also to see if we can go into that step by using Fit Connect, the API, to directly submit data to the Fachverfahren. That's why we already use the FIM data fields. But for the prototype fund, it's only the discovery part. That's why the goal for the prototype fund is now to inform around 100 people or families about benefits they are eligible for but didn't know about. And especially target groups with extra hurdles, meaning language problems, all of that German stuff on the web, or they can't afford professional help with these things. So basically where these funds really would make a tangible difference in their lives. The usage modes of this app we're developing, search by category or specific benefit. You download the app because you want to know about Kinderzuschlag or you want to know about the social benefits in Germany. But while you're filling out your age, your location, and so on, you're getting these pop-ups like, hey, you're also eligible for the Bildungsgutschein. You're also eligible for this and that. Because once you have the data points, of course, we can check all of the things you're eligible for. And the surprise later on. So if you're at night, you're sitting on the couch and you get a notification, hey, today a new law came into effect and you're eligible for the benefit. You didn't think about it, you didn't expect it, it just comes to you. Scenario building, in a sense, I'm not moving yet to Hamburg, but what if I change my data point already to Hamburg to see what's going to happen, what's going to trigger, what are the things that are happening there in terms of opportunities. And also fill out for someone else, for my grandparents, for my aunt. I'm going to fill in the data points and then be like, hey, look, you're eligible, didn't know. And beyond prototype fund, I had a whole slide for this, but that shouldn't be the focus now. I want to talk more about Solid in a second. But we have a lot of ideas there. Expand the matching approach to other areas. So not just state benefits, but you could also think about the Wärmewende, the energy efficiency retrofitting. There's a lot of demand of information that is very context dependent on the local Wärmeplan, which Wärmepumpe, and so on. Cultural offerings in your neighborhood based on your interest, peer-to-peer support, job search, all of these things we would like to explore. And also have different profiles than citizens. So for instance, Kiel or an NGO could make a profile and then matching opportunities for these profiles would sort of stream onto them. So beyond citizen and private people, we would like to explore that. We're not clear which legal form we will have after Prototype Fund. Open to ideas if you have any. One route for a business model could be monetization through meaningful ads. Very careful. I personally hate ads, but maybe there's a way to do it better. So our pitch would basically be for, let's say there's a physiotherapist in Kiel who produces a product for people with spine problems so that they can go sailing again, like very specific, very helpful. And our pitch is basically, as a provider of these requirement profiles, we can give you unprecedented, detailed access to people's personal data with a twist that you never get to see it. You don't even get to read it, you don't get to see it. But the query you write, the requirement profile, is running on that person's phone, gives them the result, and only if they choose to contact you, you will ever hear about them. Otherwise, it's a one-way street. So that's the sort of privacy by design approach. Okay. About the tech setup briefly, so this is the app on the phone. The requirement profiles in the SHACL format are externally, at the moment, in a GitHub profile. So that would be, for instance, all the offerings that Kiel has for people who just got married or something like this. Or funding for solar panels on the roof and a grant for e-bikes and so on. First thing is they get downloaded on the phone, and then you don't need internet connection anymore because it's all happening on the phone. This triggers the sort of onboarding process of, hey, do you want to fill in your place of residence? You want to fill in your age, because then we can tell you if you're eligible or not. And you start filling that out, and you get, as you fill out, you get this report updated. You're eligible for these things, not eligible for these things. And here we have more missing data points that if you fill them out, we can tell you more. And you might have guessed what I want to put in that circle here is Solid. because then we could actually enable having the Förderfunke app as a desktop app, as a web app, or as an integration into other apps, all connecting to the same solid pod, and the user gives permission, granular permission, can revoke it, and so on. That's why we would love to use Solid for this. And of course, half time? Okay. And of course, we will talk more about it, and Esther will probably tell more about it. The whole point is to separate the data market from the app market, and then other apps can also use your place of residency and your age if it's in the system and you gave permission. Just some tags, basically open source, privacy by design. The report only ever you see, the user data, we never want to see it. We're serverless, we don't need a server. This is really nice to develop, by the way. I don't need a pipeline and stuff like that. Client-side processing, it happens all on the phone. Linked open data, I could also tell a lot more about it. What I love about it is because I think it's a great answer to the complex world we find ourselves in at least two ways. It's evolutionarily open in a sense that just by choosing a table structure, my vegetables go in here, my fruits go in here, you're already making assumptions about the data, you already start structuring it, and later on you're like, oh, I guess where do I put the tomato now? Jesus Christ. And with graphs, you don't have to do that. With graphs as a data structure, you just build your thing out and you connect more to it and so on, and it's just really beautiful way of working without having to commit forever to some data structure. And what we would like to use to link standards together, so if there's 13 different ways of writing your address in Germany, some with the house number, some without, then we just put them all in a cluster and we define transformation rules from one to the other, so it just hangs all together. When we have multiple standards, we can just link them together in this cluster. One quote from the Data World podcast, RDF is the best technology for the use cases that you haven't been able to articulate today. I think that's really beautiful, and that's why I love working with it. And of course, interoperability, identifiers, vocabularies, all the good stuff, a lot of things to say about this. And I'm thinking about our app more as a convenience wrapper. So basically, these technologies, Shackle and RDF, you can run into command line also. It's just not very convenient to do. So we're just providing some nice functionality around it, but the core of it is just open standards. Anyone can use it. If we fail as a startup, you can still use it. And I'm almost feeling sorry that we have to do this, because if the web would have gone a better way back then with the linked data stuff, this would already be possible, because we would have the linked data on the web and we just run queries over it. Okay, using Solid, not yet, but yes, please. Benjamin said already I was in this course where you were actually a guest speaker in the linked data and Solid course at Ghent University, and there I built a prototype for Förderfunke that does use Solid, the community Solid server. I used it kind of like a triple store, but we did exclude it from the prototype fund scope because we expected a bit of a workload for setup and maintenance that we thought, okay, that shouldn't be our focus right now. And the question also, should we be hosting a Solid deployment? Like, no, maybe someone else should do that. Like, my current favorite would be the CENDIS, the Zentrum Digitale Souveränität. I don't know, I think we have someone from them today here. Or ITZ Bund, or someone like the Open Knowledge Foundation in Germany, or we use the Sandbox deployment from Athumi. Like, we can talk more about this later, maybe. But we're ready to switch quickly. And what are 3 levels of linking I really like, because Förderfunke links basically opportunities to eligible people. Okay, thanks. We're using linked open data to describe data fields, eligibility conditions, and we're using Solid as a sovereign data store, linking multiple apps to the same data source. So the spirit, the same principle, enter it once, reuse it countless times. You have a shared challenge of onboarding, like, okay, this app already provided the place of residence, thank you very much, that was helpful, I can use it now. For me, you get the age, great deal, okay. And the digital identity is yours to own. It will disrupt a lot of business models that should have never been built around exclusive access to your digital identity, because it's yours to own. And that's what I would like to see is more serverless architectures, because clients can directly access the well-structured data in Solid pods. And maybe even some processing to happen directly in the pod, because as I said, these are just queries to run. Why not run them directly in the Solid pod, and then you don't need an app anymore. It just comes automatically out of an ecosystem that should have been established a long time ago. Okay, then open for questions. This is our web presence. We're going to make a website soon, so far only a LinkedIn page, our GitHub. And if you want to become a beta tester, leave your email here. Hopefully in a few weeks we're at a stage where we actually release the first beta app.
All right. Thank you, Benjamin. That was very, very inspiring also. I see a lot of phones popping up, so I guess you will have some beta testers after this event. Yeah, are there any questions to Benjamin? No? Okay, maybe I have one. You said that you are not quite sure what the monetization will be or how it will be. Who will your customers be? Will it be governments? Will it be the people? Will it be the
physiotherapists?
No. Yeah. Will it be them or?
Well, we're in a process of exploring all of these options. I would like to think of
yeah.
Check. The first customer group is definitely the citizens, but we would like to explore if the city of Kiel can make a profile or an NGO can make a profile. And I don't know, it's really a process of finding what fits to the idea and what legal form we can make out of that.
And what is the biggest challenge for you as a startup in ensuring data sovereignty?
Our biggest challenge right now is digitizing the requirement profiles, because we don't have legal expertise in the team so far. So what I'm doing is I literally go to the website of the Arbeitsagentur and look for the Kinderzuschlag and try to digitize these rules into the Shackle format I need. And that doesn't really scale because there is a lot of benefits and we need to find a way to get these into the system quicker. That's the biggest challenge at the moment.
Okay. Would it help if the government would release it as linked data?
Absolutely, I would love it, yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
Good to know. All right, any question? All right, then thank you, Benjamin. Our next speaker is Esther Delouf, and she's from IMEC. IMEC is a world-leading research and development and innovation hub in nanoelectronics and digital technologies. Esther's role at IMEC is business developer and operational director at Solid Lab. Before that, she worked at Inrupt, a company co-founded by Sir Tim Berners-Lee, to bring the solid technology to the market. There she aided in bringing together the partnerships in the Flemish market. She will tell us today about the enablement of 6 million Flemish citizens to make use of solid pods and use cases around that technology in the Flemish region. Esther, please.
And this one is working. Yes, hello. Apart from all the titles that Benjamin already mentioned, I'm also here as a representative of the Flemish data utility company, Athumi. Basically, we kind of share the stage. If Solid Lab goes out to speak, I take Athumi in my purse and they do the same. A lot has already been said today by the various speakers, so I'm just going to skip through a lot of my presentation and highlight maybe some things that are a little bit different or maybe add some extra layer to it. So in Flanders, what was like the main driving force behind our minister-president opting to go full in on Solid? Well, it was actually this, the data paradox that a lot of our societies are experiencing. On the one hand, people like to have a personalized service, and with the coming of AI and digital assistants, I think in the coming years, it won't take 10 years, it will probably be like this year, the next year, the year after, we will get hyper-personalized services. And I think for a lot of us, it will be very tempting to say yes to them. But at the same time, we also feel apprehensive about giving up our privacy, giving companies and even government insight into the really delicate details of our private lives. So how as a society are we going to get out of this data paradox, wanting those hyper-personalized services on the one hand, letting your data work for you, while not having to give up on your privacy or that trust? And that is actually a real issue that our government and our society needs to think about, because I think, Teemu, you showed that 37% of people don't trust companies with the data. Well, we have an annual survey of the Flemish people, and it turns out in Flanders it's even worse. 7 out of 10 people don't trust companies with their data. For the government, it's a bit better, and it also depends what level of government you're talking about. So in Belgium, you know, we have the federal level, the Belgium level, then we have the regional level, which is for me then Flanders, and then you also, of course, have, for instance, like the city of Kiel. Like which level do you trust more with your data? That can really depend a lot, and it can, I think, also vary between Flanders and Germany and Estonia. But at least we need to figure this out. If we can't figure this out, then a government, a company can come with a very neat solution for instance, the challenges around climate change, mobility, our labor market that is changing. If 7 out of 10 people say, no, I don't want it, that's all wasted effort. As some of the previous speakers said, we in Europe, we are very good at putting a legal framework around things. I think yesterday we made the joke, we invent technology in the US, China copies it, and we put a regulatory framework on top of it. We are very good in the legal framework, super, but I think we all agree, for instance, the cookies that we got to see after GDPR, all of us, we just click accept or reject and we don't really think about it. We should figure out a technology that really makes these legal frameworks work for us. I think as a second step in the right direction, on top of these legal frameworks coming from Europe, is exactly what MyData is doing, is exactly what various startups are doing with giving people personal data vaults. I think the main challenge that we have there is, for instance, now me, I think I have a data vault with my bank, with the Flemish government. The notary also has a data vault on me, and probably, yeah, I also have my Google Drive, where I have a bunch of my stuff. But none of those talk to each other. And although having a couple of those personal data vaults makes lives easier for me, I still need to manage all of those separate data vaults. And then I think the next step, that is where Solid tries to take us. So basically, I am now 35 years old. I was born in the year that the web was born. What Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the web, wants to give to us is to add this tiny layer on top of the existing web so that we as individuals, again, have a home, a place to call our own on the web. Because right now, we are renting a room in the building of the government, and we're renting a room here and there, but there's no place for us to call home on the web. And having your digital identity on the web and having a storage place for your personal data that's under your control, that is the equivalent of giving you your home on the web back. And I'm kind of thinking, the web has been there for all of my life. It's a safe bet to think that adding this additional layer on top of the web is a good technical way of making sure that all of these legal frameworks that we put out there, that we can really make it work in a way that scales globally for all of the world. Okay, that's a short intro. Now, what did we do in Flanders? So I have these two very well-lit gentlemen on the slide. You may already recognize the one to the right, if I'm, yeah, right? The most lit gentleman in the front. That's our Prime Minister of Flanders, Jan Bon. He is a very tech-savvy guy. So he kind of saw the light a couple of years back in 2020. We were in full COVID, and he saw, okay, we are going to have all of this stimulus money coming towards the Flemish economy. We are in full COVID. let's direct it in a way that we boost our digital savviness and our digital entrepreneurship in Flanders. So he basically said, I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to launch a data utility company, just the way that the government makes sure that you have clean drinking water, electricity, etc. You should also have a utility that helps you with managing your data. So the data utility company was founded with that reason. And then the second thing is he basically said, okay, I'm going to give every citizen in Flanders their own solid data pod where you can store your data and where we can build use cases on top of. Now, the second gentleman there, the less well-lit gentleman, that's our Minister of Innovation in Flanders. Oh yeah, so of course first we have Jan Jan Bon with the Flemish Data Utility Company under the official name Athumi. And then our Minister of Innovation said, okay, I'm going to join this, and I'm going to establish a research partner, Solid Lab Flanders, which is basically a collective of research groups from all the major universities in Flanders that will focus on everything you need to bring this technology to the market. So not only the technical side, also security, user adoption, user experience, business model, legal framework, governance, the full stack of what it takes to bring a technology to the market. Now, if we look at how we are developing this market around Solid in Flanders, I usually show this slide with from the left to the right the types of user-centric aspects of your life that we're trying to help you out with. And the one to the left, especially career and leisure, those are the ones where we actually already have active use cases. Health, there's a huge amount of interest from the healthcare sector to get started, but it's very sensitive data, so it takes a bit longer. It takes a lot of aligning stakeholders, ethical framework, legal framework, etc. There's a lot happening there, but it moves slower for a very good reason. And then the two domains of the market that we are currently developing from EMEC, because they have much more of a technical challenge to it, is the challenge around home and energy and the sector around mobility. I'm going to focus most on use cases that are already active because it's more fun to talk about things that are actually happening instead of things that are being cooked up. So in the career cluster, what we see there is a lot of things happening around learning credentials, your skills and your personality, and everything around your professional administration. So let me show you a couple of examples. The first use case that went live last year was a use case for people when they go and apply for a job to make sure that you have a very easy one-click way, well, almost, to share your official diploma data from the Flemish government with your future employer. How does it work? On the left side, so basically I, as a citizen, first thing that I do is I activate my data pod with the Flemish data utility company, Athumi. And then I go to the original source holder of my data, which sits with the government. It's called Ahovox. And I say, Ahovox, please put my diploma in my data vault. And they do it. And then in a second click, I then say, okay, I now give permission to an HR company, in this case Randstad, to use that diploma within a very specific time period while I'm looking for a new job, and I give them permission to share it with potential employer X, Y, Z. And all of that is done in basically 3 clicks instantly. Voilà. That's the first use case. Now we are expanding that. That was the first use case, one supplier of data, one user of data. Now we are expanding that with not only Randstad, but also Manpower and Synergy. And we are also expanding to not only the typical job market that you think about, but the next step is to also include job students who are doing a side job during their studies. And there are a couple of more things about it. So let me just walk you through this, like how does that feel like? It's all in Dutch, of course, apologies. Basically, this screen tells you you are looking for a job as a job student. share your student attestation, because of course we need to make sure that you are officially a student. And then you have this option to share or to activate this service through It's Me. I don't know whether any one of you knows It's Me. Probably not, because it's a brand very much known in Flanders and a bit in the Netherlands. This is basically the service that we use in Flanders for all kinds of digital identification. So if you're having a contract with your bank, you're doing a payment, you're booking a ticket, you always authenticate via It's Me. I basically use It's Me 2 to 10 times per a day. So a super popular service in Flanders. You then say, okay, I want to share my student certificate. Then you go to the It's Me app. And in the It's Me app, you get the request to share your content, and you get an overview of what content you are going to share. In this case, 1, your identity, and 2, your student certificate. Then in the next page, you get directed to the Flemish government, who holds your information. And they say, okay, do you already have a personal data vault? If you don't have one, you activate one here. If you already have a personal data vault, you won't see the screen at all. And then you get an overview of the 2 certificates that the Flemish government holds on you. Apparently, I'm a student at 2 institutions, the Artevelde Hogeschool and the University of Ghent. I choose one of the options, or both, and then I share them. Voilà, and with these couple of clicks, you have automatically shared your student attestation. The important thing about this next step is we are including way more partners than in the first use case. And we have this whole list of additional data items that we want to add to your personal data vault. So also your driver's license, an outtake of your criminal records, because for a lot of jobs, you're not allowed to have a criminal record. So we really try to add as much data as we possibly can from a whole set of sources in Flanders. This is what is happening in Flanders, but we want to make sure that we test out how interoperable this system is in Europe. So we are looking to connect to, for instance, in Sweden, their employment service, Arbeidsvermittlingen, they have been experimenting with putting diplomas into the solid pods of their citizens. And in the context of data spaces in Europe, for instance, Prometheus X is a consortium of a whole bunch of skills and ed tech players who are coming together in this interoperable data space around skills. We are trying to see to connect our Flemish ecosystem that we are building towards this ecosystem on the technical side, on the legal side, business model, etc. And then I'm going to spend 1 more minute, if that's okay, on giving a quick and brief overview of what is happening in the leisure sector. So there we have the Flemish radio and television experimenting with solids. Across the pond in the UK, you have the BBC experimenting with solid. And then in the Netherlands, basically all of the media companies in the Netherlands, they have banded together and they have founded the Dutch Data Vault Foundation. The Dutch Data Vault Foundation is basically also going to give a solid pod to each and every citizen of the Netherlands. And their use cases are first and foremost media use cases. So think about having an interest profile in your solid pod that basically says, okay, my interests are in classical music, hiking, etc. And then you can determine how much you want to stay in your filter bubble and get tailored content on media sites, or how much you maybe want to have a little bit more of a diverse feed. And various media sites will give you personalized or non-personalized services depending on what your taste is like. Then in Flanders, what we are working on is a culture profile, because we have a lot of linked data from the cultural sector in Flanders, so that we can then match your interest profile to everything that is happening in Flanders, events, etc. And like my dream would then be, if I come and visit Kiel for the Kiel Woche, that I would actually get a kind of pop-up from the city of Kiel, like, Esther, your interest profile is this. These are the type of events and restaurants, etc., that you will really like. So this is kind of the future that we envision for leisure. And then I'm going to skip through the others. We have some time for questions after. And I'm just going to give you this QR code to ponder. Because in our annual test of the Flemish citizens, we kind of try to see what kind of groups are there in the whole populace. And we have found that there are basically 4 types of data privacy types in the audience. There are the privacy pioneers, the suspicious stragglers, the worryless weathercocks, and the promiscuous passionates. And if you follow this link, you go to a self-test, which in, I think, 1 or 2 minutes helps you to figure out which of these 4 profiles you are. Voilà.
Yeah, thank you, Esther. I already did this solid monitor test, so I can tell you it doesn't hurt. And I think I was a privacy pioneer.
Of course.
So, are there any questions to Esther? Please.
We have to share this mic.
Okay. We have one here.
So thanks, Esther, for the nice talk. I would like to know, would like to ask you to give us some insights on what kind of problems you have recognized while implementing these use cases. On the technical side, or on the political side, or maybe more on the privacy issue side?
The main challenge is getting the holders of the data to be willing to let people use that data.
More the political side.
Yes, yes, and not just on the political side, because what the Flemish data utility company is doing, they are actively going out towards both the private sector and the public sector to get data out there. They kind of try to see what kind of matchmaking can we make happen. And it turns out that actually it's not because this whole initiative was founded by the minister-president that players from the public sector are that willing to share data. So that's a big challenge. And actually, we kind of switched strategy, and we found that actually it's sometimes easier even to get the private sector to share data compared to the public sector. The public sector moves a little bit slower. Yeah, so that was, I think, the main challenge. Yeah.
Thank you. Another question?
In your first use case that you presented, the universities provide the student certificates or the diploma, and of course not as a screenshot or a non-readable PDF, but some linked data or structured data or whatever I can put into my data pod so it can be reused. How difficult was it for them to provide the data that is usually kept in a different way to provide it in such a way?
That was actually quite easy. Because we already had a standardized way in Flanders to code diploma data. So we already had a linked data model to do it. And this is actually, I think, one of the questions that we got from the audience before was, what are the services around Solid that are also being provided? What we have in Flanders, we have this both technology and a method to help either public or private sector players come up with a let's say, as good a model as we possibly can on a relatively short time scale. If like 30 players in the market want to exchange diploma data, so that they have like a 3 to 6 month track to agree on a data model for that diploma data or address data. So we already had that. So that was the easy part. The difficult part is then, if you want to then let a person share that data with a future employer, how do you visualize it for the person? Because it's all linked data. How do you then visualize that? Because actually, in your digital certificate of your diploma, there's way more information than on the typical sheet that you get once you finish your degree with the big stamp of university, and there's a lot of data in there. So how do we visualize that in a way that people are well informed about the granularity of the data that they are sharing? So that user experience challenge was actually the bigger challenge there.
Just one quick question out of time, if this is possible.
Follow-up question from the last one.
Yeah.
The business model is very clear for the user. What is the benefit? The business model is very clear for the implementers, the service providers. How do we motivate all of the different core data providers to sort of follow along with all of this? The universities were helpful, that's great. What do we do with the rest?
Haha. Well, I think there the business model and monetization comes in. So for all of the use cases that we do in Flanders, we look for a positive business case because we don't want to assume that the government is going to fund this for eternity. And actually, for instance, it's really the players from the HR sector that are asking for this because it reduces the time that they need to process all of the papers that they need. And that reduction in costs that the data users have, that is actually, that monetary value is being paid to the data utility company, and then they distribute that profit towards the source holders, the identity partner, the authentication partner, all of the partners in the chain to make these use cases happen. So we're now trying to figure out this business model case by case, but among all of these cases, we're starting to look for actual patterns that we can then copy-paste towards next use cases. But it grows organically.
All right. Thank you, Esther. So, yeah, next up will be a panel discussion. We are preparing the stage. This will take 3-4 minutes. I ask you to stay, because out of time, we want to have 30 minutes of discussion and also have some room for questions after that. So yeah, see you in a minute, and or please stay, I see you now. Who's leaving? So yeah, and we are preparing the stage, and for everyone, please also use the QR code hanging here around for the online poll. All right, thanks.
So now we're on stage, and I'm actually very honored that we have these 5 really well-known experts, and I'm now sitting in the middle of it, so it looks like maybe I'm an expert as well, but definitely not like those people here, because they know a lot about data spaces, the solid technology we heard about, e-government services that use personal data and become proactive because this data can be linked and reused. And they're here now on stage. And in summary, it's the concentrated expertise on digital identities. And actually, it's digital identities that should belong to us, to you, to all of us. And it's not that case today, because we actually give them away to Google, Amazon, Meta, and the like. And this is how I want to start the conversation now. And it is about what we heard today, and what we know is that people, actually, not all of them don't like sharing. We had different numbers showing that not everyone is fine with giving away all their personal data, but, and that's the big but on the other hand, they just use these data suction apps that just, you know, take your data and do whatever they want with it. And we all use these services because they are so good. So, how can we make sure, and how can we get people into not just knowing, but also changing the way how they deal with data, and make sure that this importance of identity, that it changed the way we behave, so that we really get into a movement that does more than, you know, just a couple of experts, some nerds, some people in the Flemish region, to really change the game. So, who wants to start?
Ladies first.
I'm not a nerd. Woohoo! Yes. No, I think this is really one of the most tricky questions. For instance, in Flanders, I showed you some of those screens. To me, those screens still contain a lot of details on the data sharing that you may not be served with in the moment. For instance, if I want to go and apply for a job, if I want to watch a movie, that's not the right time to give me a lecture on digital identities and data vaults and data security. I just want to watch a movie. So we're trying to find this balance between, yes, we want to inform the public. This is not just a service as you know it. This is really something that empowers you. And try to give you a little bit of that info during that user experience, but really keep it as light as possible. So basically the way that we think about it, moments such as these articles in newspapers, the public broadcast from Flanders doing a whole series on this topic, that's the right format to really go in depth. But during your user experience, we want to keep it as light as possible. Voila, that's my take.
So anyone else on the take? How can we make it easier for people to really figure out what to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think this kind of like, and also these terms of service as you go. So like indeed, like at first you are sharing maybe just a little bit of your data, but okay, if you need to get route instructions, okay, that's the time that, okay, do you want to share your location or not, instead of sucking everything in. But generally it's, again, I think governments can be, and public sector can be exemplary. I think that people trust. I think in your results, they are being trusted more than some others. And they're the first step, even before you have like data sharing per se, it's just being transparent about what data is being collected in the first place. Even that is already building the trust. And I think that the government really should be caring about keeping and building trust.
I really would like to extend that part, because I think I'm completely on the side of Timo. I think one of the core problems is that we are talking about data sharing. And data sharing is always like giving data away. But in general, most of the use cases are not about giving data away. It's about transparency, it's about integration, it's about automation. And if you, for example, show that people have not to create an additional layer of data sharing, instead they just have the benefits of data integration, of completely, as in my use case, as completely automating their government workflows. And of course, nobody really likes the bureaucracy, so they really would be happy to have something like that. If for example, if just one person in a group is actually experienced that this is not even a problem anymore. You are not to have these kind of painful forms, you have to fill out all of the data by yourself. Instead, this is automated. After a short time, many people will do it like that, and then it's not about, in their mindset, it's not about data sharing, it's about data automation. I think then we have a much more positive spin in comparison to data sharing is always creating some kind of fear. So although in the technical documentation there's also data sharing mentioned, so I think we have to maybe disconnect a little bit from this kind of technical term.
So then that would bring me to another question, that the role of governments. And yes, we had a little poll that you filled out, and it said the confidence about sharing data on the internet, that roughly a third says it's very high. So they're fine with sharing the data, but it's more than half of it that is in the very low, like number 1 to 3, which means half of us are not confident with sharing data on the internet. So, and then the next question was, most likely to trust your data. So who would you trust your data? And actually, I'm very pleased and happy that governments are the ones that are highly trusted, which I didn't expect actually, but I think that's really great. It's banks, quite a third, but almost half of you trust governments. So this brings me to my questions. Do governments play a specific role when we want to implement this, when we want to get started and initiate this? Maybe I turn my head towards you, Florian.
Yeah, I don't want to discredit any of the polling done and so on. I just want to put perhaps a small caveat on this. Number one, the first question is, do I not trust an organization because I don't trust them as a sort of, what are the ethics behind what they're trying to do? Are they trying to make money with me? Are they trying to provide services? Of course, the public sector wants to provide services. They're not making money from this. Number two, how have they been treating my data so far? Have they been good at cybersecurity, for example? And so this is a point where I would ask, well, even if Google does lose my data, or even if Facebook does abuse my data, at least I get to see the new child of like an old classmate from 20 years ago. What does government do for me? You know, what have they ever done for me? So I think that if government would provide really, really good services and would also protect my data, then hell yeah, I'm going to trust government more than the average private company. But at the moment, it's sort of one part is doing one part of the equation very well, and the other is doing the other part of the equation very well. But I think government can try to do both angles a bit better.
Quite a challenge, but anyone else wants to?
Just add on to that, like I said, the transparency, like even, it can be hard to share data across organizations, but the transparency bit, like in Estonia, like indeed, if the police checks your register plate, you get a notification, right? So I mean, that type of transparency is magnificent and a way to kind of build trust in the government in this case, along with the explanation, of course, why it was done. One thing now that, okay, we didn't touch so much on the AI, and maybe good, maybe we've heard about AI a lot, but again, for example, the city of Helsinki has a registry of applications that are now using AI, and there it's transparently explaining how personal data is or is not used in those particular services. And again, it's that explainability. Indeed, when you have good proactive services, you hardly see the service, which means that, okay, maybe you can't even always credit the government for doing that at times. If everything goes well, you don't credit that. But just being very transparent, that's the kind of first, very kind of relatively low-hanging fruit. I'm not going to exaggerate, there will be challenges with that as well, but a relatively low-hanging fruit.
I would think that with, I mean, we in Europe, we are really investing a lot of time and effort into letting data flow better. Europe is really taking initiative on data spaces, but we haven't figured out yet how to put people in those data spaces. And figuring that out is going to take a lot of effort on the technical side, on the governance side, legal side. And I think governments have the right size and incentive to kind of carry that burden of taking those first steps. And I think there we should be smart and try to, I think that's also what Florian really does very, very well is everything that has been learned in Estonia, okay, go and spread it out. I think what MyData is doing is really trying to interconnect the dots, making sure that we don't all need to reinvent the wheel. What Flanders is doing is first of all, of course, trying to really demonstrate use cases for its own people, but the data utility company and everything that we have built is really meant for Europe. So for instance, if the city of Kiel would say, oh, we would like to experiment with giving our citizens their own pod and building some use cases, you can either say like, okay, we're going to go all the way, we are going to try and set up these servers and the digital infrastructure to make it work. But what Flanders offers is, okay, we figured it all out. You can basically, as a first step, come and get your pods in a Flanders. If you then, in a year or 2 years, say, oh no, we want to do it ourselves in Kiel or in Germany or with the Länder, you can always do that. The whole infrastructure that we are building is meant to be portable. It's meant to be able to switch from provider to provider. We just want to make sure that we can help other regions across Europe to take those first steps. And I think the key is to always make sure with whatever we do, to always make sure that people can have a choice. Because in Flanders, government is the most trusted party to provide the data pods. Luckily, we only found it out later. The Flemish government just said, okay, we're going to give all of the citizens their data pod, and then only later we kind of tested which entity would you actually trust to be your pod provider, and it turns out that the Flemish government was the most trusted. Oof. Also, hospitals, universities were also among the very high scoring ones. But if I tell this in the Netherlands or in the UK, they say, oh, I would never trust my government to be my personal data vault provider. They would trust the bank or someone or a party from the private sector. And in every region, people should have a choice. So it's not because the Flemish government is the first to give their citizens a pod in Flanders. that it's the intention of the government to be that data vault provider forever. The intention is there for other players in the market, being an NGO, a hospital, a university, whoever, if they can set up this service and provide it to people, and people say, oh, I trust that party better in holding my data, then it's up to the citizen to just port their data from one data pod to the other.
Yeah, I just want to add one other notion to that. You said, Florian, what has the government ever done for me? What can the government do for itself? Like we have this discussion in Germany now with the Kindergrundsicherung, that there might be thousands of new positions requirement to have this proactive aspect of, okay, we can also pay your kid to go to the Schullandheim. So this is coming, but it needs a lot of human processing power, which is tax money, of course, and there might be room to automate some of these. Like it cannot be so hard to have these rules, and we're sort of saying, okay, please create a deployment so we can do our use case and stuff, but I think there is a massive potential to also make government processes slimmer, more effective, and more interoperable. And I'm pretty sure that in Flanders you can feel some of this effect also on the inside of the administration, not just the benefits we're having from it.
Yeah, and I really would like to extend it. This is like one thing that we really have to recognize. I think like 20 years ago, everybody would have asked, oh, how can we ever do something like that? But we already see that in Flanders is working, and working also in other countries as well. And we see that these kind of data space initiatives are actually growing. And we are not like the first mover over here. We don't have to invent everything. So I would like to actually ask people who are responsible in cities and states and so on to actually just make a first step. They will recognize much easier than I think, because everybody's thinking about this kind of huge applications that needs to be very, very complicated infrastructure, but actually everything is there. And we have all of these standards already available, there's implementations available. It doesn't cost much, but we really have to start over there. And if we don't start, then it will never happen.
You just mentioned there could be several providers for data pods or for data spaces. Can I use several ones at the same time, or do I have to decide to go for one?
I mean, effectively, you could choose with every single data set from provider you would share that one.
And you would assume, just like many of us might have 1 or 2 or 3 banks that we are using out of many, it's in a similar way, or telecom operators, right? We're using different telecom operators. They still interoperate. We might have a work phone and a home phone from a different operator. It still works together. So similarly with your infrastructure, data infrastructure, should be coming from multiple providers. Maybe one provider is trusted in health specifically. One is maybe the city and the government, and maybe you use one for your leisure activities or whatever, for example. Or maybe you have a European and local operators. So
I think the question is also then where we draw the administrative boundary between sort of those core data sets that are shared through Solid or some other technology, and those that are still stored in particular agencies. Just one thing, and I don't want to sort of shit talk Finland at the moment, but there was this data breach of, I think it was the psychological evaluation and so on, and so that's obviously, so would you then store your entire health record of, I don't know, you're 70 years old, you have 70 years of health records on your data pod? Like, where do you draw the boundary between core data sets that would be readily shareable and stuff that is still institution specific? And as far as I know, there's not a single region. Has Flanders figured this out, or are we still sort of discussing where we draw that line?
We don't pretend to have the answer and to force it onto the market. The technological setup that we go for allows for having like one pod with all of your data in it, or having 1,000 pods with all your data spread out. I think the key thing that ties all of that data storage together is your identity. And even there you may have several identities. I may have my official identity, EIDAS-wise, with most of my data attached to it, but maybe I am a drug dealer in my spare time, and then I want all of my drug dealing activity to be in its own realm, and I don't want those two to ever cross over.
I'm schizophrenic, so 50-50.
Basically, for now, what works in Flanders, because the investment cost of setting up this service is still quite substantial, we kind of notice that most players say, I'm happy to put all of my data into the data pod of the government. It's just cheaper. But some other players, like for instance banks, have also already started to invest in data vaults, etc. They are just looking to see, okay, how can we make our system interoperable with the system of the government? And that is starting to grow. And then maybe one last thing is also on a technical level. For instance, for most of my data that is used by my service providers, by the government, it makes sense that it's in the cloud and always available. But some of that data I would like to have on my phone, also when I'm not online. For instance, like if I want to show my driver's license, etc. And then I also have a lot of these smart appliances in my home, my solar panels on my roof and my smart battery and the water meter and the... I think what we are looking at EMEC, if you are going to have a lot of smart devices and a lot of high-frequent data streams, do you want to send them all to the cloud? The digital footprint is just going to be amazing. So let's just keep that data on the edge, on your device. And then, for instance, think about if you want to do home automation in a privacy-preserving way. Instead of sending all of your sensor data of all those smart appliances in your home to one central cloud server to let an AI run on it, no. Take the AI, bring it to your home, let it run locally on your data. You're not sharing your data with anyone. A service provider, a company is sharing their AI algorithm with you. So that's also a different way of looking at it.
Okay, so now we learned a lot about government, their role, and that we are trusted, at least a bit, in this audience. So as we have people working in administration here in the audience, and of course we as the city of Kiel, we are really interested in how to get started. So how to get the first move? You said it's better doing something and learning and experiencing and then just looking at it or thinking about it. So how do we get started? What partners do we need? We heard from Benjamin already, Open Knowledge Foundation, Zendis, ITZ, Bund would be preferable candidates, but I would like to elaborate a little bit more. How do you get something like this started, like in Flanders where it's now moving already and rolling?
Just very briefly, I think looking at it from a municipality or a city-to-city level would not be terribly helpful because you would just build another degree of fragmentation into the system. At the very least, what I also hope to indicate with my talk was to start at the federal state level would probably be a good idea, so that if we have the 5 biggest municipalities inside a federal state sort of kickstart these developments, and then some smaller municipalities see whether that works for them, that we can then say, okay, as I said, Schleswig-Holstein, Hamburg, and MacPom decide that, we are now using this and this principle for data exchange and data storage and so on. So this, yeah.
Actually, I have a different opinion on that part.
Please.
My take is the following. So the cities that will actually start the first movement over here, they will create an ecosystem of companies that are capable of doing something like that. So being agile as a city, much more agile than a federal state, being agile in a city might help a lot to actually provide the information so that new companies are actually founded and evaluating data like you are doing it, evaluating data, being prepared, learning and establishing their applications before other companies, before other states or other cities or districts or what else are publishing their data. So I think this might really be something where you can drive the local development of businesses in contrast to this kind of huge starting point from the federal government where there would be no agility or something like that, which would be completely, would take a long time, it would be very, very, time consuming and would create a lot of discussions. So that's why my take would be start on the local level, don't wait for anything, develop your own businesses in your own ecosystem, be the new IT cluster in this particular field because this is coming anyways. So it's better for you to actually develop the companies in your field. In your region.
I can maybe build on that. I have a tendency to agree. The cities are well suited. They are part of citizens' daily lives, so they're well suited for use cases that are very local in nature also. Like we talked yesterday, I think it was Jonas with you, that we talked about that, okay, is there a use case around the Kiel week where people are coming in and need their personal data? So that's going to be very specific to Kiel, but a great potential use case. In Finland, we have the 6 biggest cities that do a lot of collaboration on stuff where they think that the state or the country is moving too slow. So there is a good collaboration between the 6 biggest cities, and I imagine you know best what works here. Of course, learning from these international organizations like the Cities Coalition for Digital Rights or Open and Agile Smart Cities or MyData or others. Open knowledge, not just Open Knowledge Deutschland, but open knowledge as a whole. So they can be helpful. But just a third point there, how cities can get started. One thing that, of course, we'd like to see is gradually these kind of requirements being put into procurements. So even when you are not yet, building solid pods or whatever, you have some requirements relating to that. Okay, data needs to be available individually through APIs or something like that. Just like in open data, that has helped kind of the uptake of open data. So this is saying now without knowing any of you guys are looking at me like, shit, it ain't gonna work. But
just very briefly, and that's exactly why I said the federal state, not the national, but the federal state level. Where do those procurement rules and so on come from? This is exactly the issue where sort of I think some governance, not top down, but mid layer would be helpful. But yeah.
I wanted to suggest a possible compromise between these 2 different levels. There, I don't know if you noticed the Haushaltsdaten in Berlin. I don't know the term Haushaltsdaten in English. The household of Berlin will for the first time this year published as linked open data, and it's a collaboration between Berlin and a city in Schleswig-Holstein. I'm sorry, I forgot which one. But they're doing this together. They're developing an ontology to do this. And that means that neither of them can get too deep into their locality. They have to develop the vocabulary so it transcends their own regions. And maybe there could be a way for Kiel to partner up with another city, maybe in a different country, different Bundesland, and be in constant guidance or consulting with MyData, with Open Knowledge Foundation, in contact with Sendis to see like, okay, we're doing this locally, we're doing it all here, but with the scope of we want to expand later, we want to attach this at a higher level, in conversation with Athumi, what's the European regulation, but at the same time, go running with someone, go for it.
I just got the notification to not just wrap it up, but now to open up for the audience to fill in some questions. Is there anything from the audience you want to ask these experts here on stage? I'm going to translate. If you want to ask in German, that's totally fine. Ihr könnt auch auf Deutsch fragen. Ich würde es übersetzen oder versuchen es zu übersetzen, so gut ich kann. So, take the chance now.
Parlez-vous français?
Petit peu.
Okay.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, there are no wrong questions.
Hi. Oh, okay. So I think you can hear me. We actually got a question in the chat from the live stream regarding your previous slides, Andreas. And the questions are, do further authorities have to know about previously created pods, or do they ask for info and Anna decides from which pod data is supposed to be shared? Is she supported in the process?
Yeah, so in our particular prototype, we implemented it like that. First of all, the users, the citizens is asked, would you like to share data that were in your local pod? If the answer is yes, then the authorities can look up what other pods are available, if there are other pods available, and then can ask if this kind of federated data space can also be explored. If the citizen decides not to share, then this is not available. So just be very open about that one. In our prototype, we actually also had this kind of, I don't know how to phrase this politely. But people who would never like to share anything, who would disconnect completely, even these people can work with our prototype. They just have to fill in the forms all the time by themselves. So like in a traditional way. But all the other ones that actually can gradually decide what kind of data they would like to share. And if they would like to share, for example, if they just had said, okay, I would like to share this kind of information about the pods that are available, the next thing that we are asking is this the correct information? Is this actually the thing you would like to share? There might be a reason why you would not like to share. So on all of these levels, you can decide this. In the prototype, it's asking all of these different things. In an actual application, I would not expect that people are not trusting the data, for example, coming from the Ministry of Finance, because, well, this is like, it was already in a text declaration, so this is obviously official information, but in general, of course, we would like to empower citizens to actually make the decisions by themselves.
Maybe one quick addition. In Estonia, obviously, we're not running on Solid, but something that would refer to this is what we call a registry of registries. So basically a catalog where government officials can also see, hey, who is currently collecting by the once-only policy this bit of data? Who is collecting this? And then based on that, you get, or you can make some particular requests if a citizen wants to use a particular service, and then the data exchange happens at the back end.
I think one thing to add to it, whether you're working with catalogs or whether you're working with linked data, I think what we want to make sure is that you as a user, you don't have to go and search in a gazillion folders to find the file that you want to share, but we always show the screen with, this is the data in your realm that matches the request, and then you still get to decide, okay, am I going to share all of it, or maybe like, oh, these ones, yeah, but that one not. You're always the final one deciding.
Okay, one more question, please. Yes.
Yes, I think, thank you very much for all the insights you gave us today. I'm not understanding one thing with the pods in Estonia. I think we heard a lot about this pods idea, and I think it sounds good. And we heard about Estonia, and it's working very well there. Are you using these kind of pods or something like this in Estonia? Because I thought you are using the EID, and I think when doing the marketing for the citizens, it's very important to not overwhelm them with different kinds of pods or IDs or service accounts or things like that. So I'm thinking about linking the EID. We have this also in Germany, not running very well, but it's okay. It's there, I could say like that. About linking these two things so that citizens, they maybe, it's my opinion, they don't care about the pod or the EID. They need one way to organize the identity thing.
So,
would you go first?
Yeah, so maybe there's a misconception over there. So you might remember the slide I showed about the identities, the data, and the business logics. So these are completely separated, but they are connected such that you can imagine like the identity is your key to your data. And this data is a federated data space, so that's why if you open your own data vault, you not even recognize that you have 1,000 pods on top. You never will see this. If you look in the technical deal, you will see it. You are capable to see it, but the regular citizen will not see it. Why should they look into all of these technical details? From their perspective, it's like having a huge file with many sheets of papers. But they don't care about how many papers there are, where all the information is stored, because it's a federated database. It's interlinked. You used already the term for that. It's interlinked, and that's why we are also propagating the solid technologies, because they are built on the RDF framework, which is part of the linked data movement, which is creating these kind of federated machine processable data spaces such that automatically the data can be evaluated, and you don't have to care, as a regular user, don't have to care about the technical foundations.
Just for clarity, Estonia does not use pods. We have an electronic identity, just what you mentioned as well, and the data would be stored in connection with this unique identifier, like the citizen's number, in the different registries, depending on what particular data they store. The one thing where pods and the Estonian or other countries' models collide or sort of disagree is about data portability. It is easier with pods than to do with traditional EID systems. On the other hand, there's data retrievability. What if I lose my device? What if I, port from one phone to another, or I want to have two instances? I have a work and a personal phone. Does the law allow to have two copies? If it does, I could give this to you. So like it closes one can of worms, but it opens another can of worms. So, and this is just something where every society needs to decide for itself what it is okay with and what it's not okay with. Yeah, that will be a quick summary.
Yeah, we'll just maybe build on that. I guess the common term for this data exchange in the EU jargon, we talk about data intermediaries. Or in our MyData jargon, we talk about MyData operators, which are more or less the same. And some of them are based on kind of personal data spaces, personal data stores, whether it's kind of solid pods or others. And some of them act more like the Estonian model, where the data stays where it is now, but there is basically a content management or an aggregator layer. And both ways can work just fine. There is no, both have their benefits, their business cases, and in some cases you want to do the other or the other, but the point being that the user has control, might have a couple of different operators they're using, maybe just one, but there are multiple ways to skin the cat, so to say.
Yeah, but you really have to keep in mind that you need this kind of flexibility. It's really important, because just for example, in the Ministry for Research and Education, Federal Ministry of Research and Education in Germany, there was a research program, Datentreuhandmodelle, I don't know, data trustee models, I don't know, something like that. And there we did some additional research, so like Begleitforschung, I also don't know the English term for that one. They did some research, some survey on that part, and they figured out that even 50% of the users could not agree on sharing the data with someone who actually has an intention to use the data for some kind of application. Instead, around about 50% of the users asked for a separation between people who keep my data, if just a task to keep my data, data trustees, and on the other hand, people who actually implement applications on top of that. Because the observation is the following, we assume that the observation is the following by the users. If people are intended to use your data and make money by creating new applications, they will ask for more data, they will try to find loopholes in the data and so on and so on, while data trustees always into just protecting the data and just creating this kind of safe space, safe data space where you have access to your data. And this, from my perspective, is a huge door opener with relation to getting the trust of the people, and that's why I'm favoring the more not centralized platforms, instead having this kind of interoperability by default, so
okay,
that we have these kind of options.
I'm feeling a bit sorry, but I have to stop the whole discussion. I think we just got started, and we could continue for quite a while. I heard that you stay here, so they will be here in the food court and running around, so please continue the discussion after the panel discussion. We ran out of time, so I just skipped my total wrap-up now. I leave it to Benjamin, so you got the last -7 minutes to wrap up the morning.
Yeah, we started 10 minutes later, so I think it's okay to be now 7 minutes over. So yeah, thank you for the panel discussion. Yeah, thank you for being here. I think this was very, very inspiring today, but as we know, we could maybe fill 2 or 3 days of inputs and discussions and all that. We don't have the time, unfortunately, but as Jonas said, the speakers will stay here for a moment and you can talk with them also. And yeah, there is tons of material in the internet also, if you are interested. Yeah, and you can also get in touch with me or with Jonas or the city office for digitalization if you are interested. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this event and that you also got inspired what the future holds for the use of personal data. And I think this is a hot topic, and it's not an easy topic, but people are doing something about it, and that's good. Yeah, I like to sincerely thank all speakers for showing up, for being here in Kiel also, not only participating online. I think this is also a very, very nice sign towards to us and also the German authorities maybe that, yeah, we or people also, because when it comes to data sharing, I think the Germans are always a little bit more restrictive, but maybe I'm wrong, others are also restrictive, but yeah. Also thank you for joining online in the live stream, and the morning event today will be accompanied by a workshop in the afternoon in the starter kitchen. This is the building right behind you for all here on site. This aluminium-like building over there where the red stripe is. You can join there if you like at 1 o'clock. For those who had enough of this topic for today or like to digest it, there will be a tons of interesting inputs also on Smart City, as we already heard in the morning here around in this building. So yeah, please enjoy yourself, grab some food outside, and thank you for today.